Hey there, I'm Reverend Jim. This is the whole Bible, the series where we go through, yep, you guessed it, the whole Bible. We are in Genesis chapter 24 through 26. We are continuing the story of Isaac. This is Isaac part 2. If you missed part 1, go check it out last week. That was when he was a kid and went on this really awkward hike with his dad that ended with a knife above his head. I think you know the story. If you don't know the story, go check out that video or go read the Bible. Now we're in part 2, Genesis 24 through 26, and this is another one of kind of Isaac's big hits, most notable moments. We'll get to that in chapter 25, but let's make sure we know where we are in this. So we're kind of in the midst of all these big name patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. We are in the midst of Isaac, about to have a couple twin boys born. Lots going on here, and that's going to lead us to Jacob, which is the second born, spoiler alert, and eventually Joseph, which takes up the last portion. So we're not there yet. Back to Isaac, part 2. This is 3 chapters, 24, 25, 26, and let's just kind of talk about them one by one. The first one, chapter 24, you could call Chosen Partnership. This is the one where Isaac needs a wife, so Abraham sends a servant to go find a wife for Isaac. Interesting that they keep going back to where their family came from, back to the land they left in Genesis 12, and they keep going there to find wives. We're going to see that theme happening again with the next generation as well. So a servant goes back to the homeland, and he has this whole plan. Whoever waters my thirsty camels, horses, what do they have there? Camels. It was camels. And it turns out there's this woman, Rebekah, who says, sure, I'll give him a drink. Little did she know, this was a reality show dating thing where the winner gets to be Isaac's wife. And she's the one who wins. Now, this chapter is not just, a woman who's whisked away at the whims of patriarchy. Again, this one really elevates Rebekah's agency. It shows her as an active participant who chooses to go and becomes a central covenant bearer. That's an important note. Often the women are just cast to the margins of these stories, but Rebekah here, she becomes a central character who makes a choice. I love it. All right, and then we get to chapter 25. All right, this one has a lot going on. First off, Abraham has another wife. He gets married again. I did not know that until I read this closer, but it clearly says right there at the top, Abraham marries Keturah. All right, Abraham, way to go. Your wife, Sarah, just died. Now we're already on to another one. I wonder what happened to all those descendants. We only really follow the line of Isaac here, but there was a lot more sons and daughters of Abraham than we ever really get to see in the text. After the story of Abraham getting married again, Abraham dies, which you could correlate the two, I suppose. Did the new wife have something to do with that? I don't think so. I'm just having fun with it, but it's interesting the way they go. And then at the end of this chapter, we got a couple babies born, Jacob and Esau, or we should call them Esau and Jacob. The order of names is important in the Bible. You list kind of a priority first, then second. So Esau and Jacob is the way we would list these initially, but later we're going to call them Jacob and Esau. Esau is the firstborn, all red and hairy, comes out looking like a red-headed Grinch, I guess, and then Jacob's holding on to his heel, which is actually what the name Jacob means. It's like heel grabber, supplanter, trickster, which we're going to see a whole lot of that happening in the next video when we really get into Jacob. So we get them born, and then suddenly they're grown up. They're teenagers at least, and Esau's the one who is all rugged and loves to go hunting, and Jacob is a little more close to home, smooth-skinned, it says. He's literally a mama's boy in this story, and he'd rather be home doing the cooking. And we have this moment where Esau comes back from hunting, and he is starving, and Jacob is cooking some lentil stew. Red stuff is the actual translation of the text. And Esau's like, bruh, I'm hungry. Can I have some of that? And Jacob's like, if you sell me the birthright. And Esau's like, I'm so hungry, whatever, take it, it's yours. Birthright is not blessing. We'll get to the blessing in the next video. Birthright is kind of the inheritance of the stuff. The blessing would be the inheritance of the, providence, and it's all going to go good for you, that God is going to bless you in the generations. I'm sure there are other ways to delineate birthright and blessing, but that's kind of how I categorize it in my head. So this chapter gives us a whole lot, from Abraham's new wife, Abraham's death, birth of these baby boys. They grow up, and one of them sells the birthright, and suddenly Jacob has something over his brother. And that's where it ends. That's where this chapter finishes off, which leads us to chapter 26, struggle and provision. We got a lot going on here as well. There's a famine, there's some conflict with local powers, and there is this dispute over wells, because water is a big deal, and having access to it is something that people are paying close attention to. Now, in the midst of this famine, people are looking for places to be safe and secure, and so they go to Gerar, and an interesting thing happens here. Maybe not interesting thing, because it's happened before. Isaac pretends that his wife is his sister. What? We've had this happen twice with Abraham, and now Isaac is doing literally the same thing his dad did. Are they like, we know who you are, you're Abraham's kid. Abraham did the same trick. So there's a lot going on. It's interesting to see these cyclical natures within these stories. And remember, this is cyclical storytelling. They're telling us the same story in so many different ways, giving us lap after lap, circle after circle. We see it in the struggle and the tension between brothers. That's been happening since Cain and Abel. It's going to keep happening with Jacob and Esau. And we can't forget the tension that's just below the surface of the page between Isaac and his half-brother Ishmael. There's that whole tension too. There's a lot going on in these stories. Oh, and then this chapter ends with Esau's Hittite wives, which is interesting. They point out where they came from. Because remember back in chapter 24, there was this big deal. Abraham's like, don't marry a Canaanite. Don't marry one of the locals. Go back home. What does Esau do? Esau, the one who's supposed to be the firstborn, the blessing, marries the locals, which is a whole other commentary that we should talk about. Why is there this prejudice against the Canaanites? But Esau does it. Esau falls in love, marries a Hittite woman. Women? More than one? Yeah, there's two of them. It says Esau was 40 years old. He married Judith, daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. And they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. What a line. The two wives that Esau brought into the family made life bitter for his parents. And that's it. That's how this section ends. We have a lot of tension going on. We are setting up for Jacob's story to really take the lead next, and that comes in the next video. But first, let's hear these 3 chapters kind of given to us 1 minute at a time from 3 fantastic theologians. First one is me. Hey, that guy looks familiar. Next, we're going to hear from Reverend Kathy Caimano, and the last chapter in this video will be from Reverend Amanda Meisenheimer. Then we'll come back for a few questions. So take a minute. Here we go. Bible in a minute, Genesis 24. Abraham is old, which is a recurring theme throughout most of his story, but now it's time for his son Isaac to get married. Otherwise, the whole generations as numerous as the stars of the sky promise won't really get very far. And so Abraham sends his servant to find a wife for his son, only he has one condition. She can't be from the Canaanites, their current neighbors. Abraham insists that his servant go back to his family, back to the home he so boldly left 13 chapters ago. And so Abraham's servant returns home, and after a semi-elaborate test involving giving water to his camels, he meets Rebekah and tells her the news. You're the one. You're going to marry Abraham's son, Isaac. And we thought that all these dating apps made things complicated. Rebekah returns with Abraham's servant to marry Isaac, and God's promise to bless Abraham with a family can go on. I find it interesting, though, that Abraham insists on going back in order to move forward, because sometimes we can fear the unknown and we revert back to where we are comfortable and function from there. And it's not that this is implicitly wrong, but what would it look like for us to trust where God is leading us rather than to insist on returning to where we've been?
Bible in a minute, Genesis 25. Abraham was married to Sarah, but he also had a child by Hagar, and he sent her away, and that was Ishmael. Abraham had a third wife. Who knew Abraham had a third wife? I didn't even know that. His son's name was Isaac. Isaac marries Rebekah. Rebekah has twins, Jacob and Esau, who are fighting from the time they were in the womb, and then Jacob steals Esau's blessing and writes in the family. Every time we think about biblical families as being some sort of unattainable standard of goodness or uniformity, we read the Bible and we see that we have been a mess of conflict and misunderstanding from the beginning. The good news? We are a mess that belongs to God, and each one of us is a shining shard of God's love that makes up this beauty of the universe, no matter how flawed we are and no matter how hard a time we have getting along.
Bible in a minute, Genesis chapter 26. Bible in a minute, Genesis chapter 26. Do you have deja vu yet? Do you have Abraham, Isaac deja vu yet? God promises to Abraham that his descendants will be blessed. God promises to Isaac that his descendants will be blessed. Abraham lies about the identity of his wife. Isaac lies about the identity of his wife. Abraham has disputes about wells. Isaac has disputes about wells. Abraham has a son whom he others. Isaac has a son whom he others. So if history keeps repeating itself and no story is new, then there are Abrahams and Isaacs who appear to get the blessings, and then there's Rebekah's and Sarah's, Ishmael's and Esau's who are othered in the story. So what does that mean for us today? Are you feeling like a Rebekah or an Esau or an Isaac or Abraham?
All right, first question, as always, what stands out to you? What do you notice? Notice what you notice. That's really the practice we're trying to do, is take a slower read through the Bible and notice what we notice. But here are a few particular questions that might help you as well as you think about these chapters. Number one, how might this chapter challenge traditional hierarchies around gender, calling, and who gets to carry the promise forward? Thinking of chapter 24 when Rebekah was brought in as the wife. There's a whole lot going on here with gender, calling, and who gets to carry the promise forward. I think it's worth thinking about in our world today and all those things. Number two, what might it mean that God works within messy, imperfect family systems rather than the ideal ones? Oh, isn't that comforting to know that these famous families in the Bible are pretty dysfunctional, and that dysfunction is going to keep going in the next section. Number three, why do these stories keep repeating themselves? What deeper meaning might they be trying to convey? Anytime you see the same rhythm happening twice or thrice, like we see here, the editor is trying to do something on purpose. So we need to pay attention to those particular things as well. And what do you think it means that we keep seeing that happening in a story like this? All right, that's what I'm going to leave you with. There's a bit about Genesis 24 through 26. Next week, we are in Genesis 27 through 30 with Jacob, part 1. Get ready for some tricks. I'll see you then.